Hi, my name is John Petty, and I'd like to welcome you to another episode of Growing Up in Flip Flops. Today's episode I've entitled Pay Up. The town I grew up in has the unofficial motto, or it may even be official motto, of City of Palms. Yes, there are a lot of palm trees there and a lot of different kinds of palm trees, but it probably comes primarily from the fact that Mr. Edison put in 14 miles of palm trees on either side of the road, basically from where his home was all the way down to the beach. Alternately, the motto could have been City of Gladiola. Throughout the mid and late 20th century, the town was the largest producer of gladiola flowers in the world. And all that business is now gone. It's all gone to South America, but that was there. The other thing it could have been was the city of poincianas. Poinciana trees, if you've never seen one, are a large flowering tree that are very, very beautiful when they're in bloom. They are covered, absolutely covered, in these beautiful orange and red blossoms. Think of a crabapple in the spring covered in white blossoms, but this is a large tree that covered in just absolutely beautiful orange and red flowers. For all the poinciana's beauty, it is also an extremely messy tree. Just think when all those flowers fall off, it just covers the ground. It's just a mess if you have a lawn or something similar. It just is covered in these decaying orange and red flowers. The second thing that comes from a poinciana tree is when the flowers are pollinated, they develop these long pods that are about a foot long, and when they dry out, they're semi-hard, and they then fall from the tree, and these pods shatter on the ground and spread seeds. The dried pods, when it splits the half, or even if you get one before it falls, as a kid, those are little makeshift swords. They're pretty rigid, and you can whack pretty hard with them. But the other thing is, when they shatter, there's about a dozen or so, about inch-long, hard seeds in those pods. And in our front yard, we probably had the largest poinciana tree in the entire town. When the flowers came down, I had to go out and rake it up and put it in baskets and put it out. Either take it in the backyard where it could rot, but get it off our yard. But also pick up the pods. And as I stated earlier, they made really great little swords and, things to whack about with. Well, one day I was probably out there with my sister and playing swords with the poinciana pods, and I had the bright idea, if the pod split apart and a seed or seeds came out, I picked up some of the seeds and started throwing them at my sister. Well, as luck would have it, I hit my sister in the eye with one of the poinciana seeds. Well, she, screaming, crying, everything, Mom, 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 John hit me in the eye with a poinciana seed. So she runs in. Apparently, I got her good. And we ended up going to the doctor, the three of us, my mother, my sister, and I. We get there, and God knows, they something cleaned her up or patched her up, flushed out her eye, whatever. And we're getting ready to leave, and we're standing there, and my mother at the counter, she says, well, pay the doctor. And I'm probably 10 years old, and I look at her and I'm like, what? And she said, you caused this problem. You're responsible. Pay the doctor. And I looked at the nurse or receptionist behind the counter and asked, well, how much is this? And I don't know, back in the 60s, $20, $30, I don't know, something like that. And I turned to my mom and I said, I haven't got that. money. I don't have it. Maybe in my savings account from the Christmas money or something like that. And she looked at me and she said, "Oh, yes, you do." And I said, "What?" And she said, "Your coin collection." I had a really good coin collection. And back then, there was these little trifold blue books that one was for pennies, one was for nickels, dimes, etc. And you pressed them in, for each year, and it had, for the different mints and everything for a year, so you'd collect it. And I had gone every time my mom had some spare change or something, I asked if I could go through her purse and search or, anything, looking for coins that I didn't have for my collection. I even had 1943 steel penny in the collection. Really an oddball thing from World War II when one year they didn't make copper pennies because the copper was going to the war effort. But anyway, I had a fairly extensive coin collection in these little books. And I said, "But Mom, that's my coin collection." And she said, "You did this to your sister. You're responsible. You need to pay the doctor." And I don't have it. And she said, "We'll go home and get it." So we drove home. I got all my coin collection books. I just couldn't believe this. I mean, this was the thing that was valuable to me that I had spent so much time putting together. And I collected these things up. I was probably whimpering, thinking, "Oh my God, this can't be true. This can't be real." And we drove back to the doctor's office. And my mother's standing there and said, "Okay, pay the doctor." And I literally stood there with these little blue trifold books, punching out quarters, nickels, dimes, and pennies out of this collection. And I don't know what it added up to, let's say $15 or something. Emptied out my collection, and let's assume the total bill was $20. My mom made up the other $5, and I'm just devastated while I'm sitting there in the doctor's office popping these coins out of these holders. And just, oh God, this just was killing me. And my mom was, "I hope you learned your lesson. If you do something, you're responsible for it." I mean, it just ate on me for days that here was coin collection that I had literally spent in my young life years putting together, and it was gone. Well, as luck would have it, we had to go back to the doctor with my sister in a week to check on her or something like that. And I went along and got there, and this was not a happy place for me because obviously I'd been there a week earlier and had to pay for this. And I got there, the receptionist called me over, and she said, "I have something for you." And she had a little baggie or something, and it was my entire coin collection. And she had kept it. Obviously, she had cut some kind of deal with my mother and said, "Here's your coin collection. We kept it for you. We hope you've learned your lesson." Talk about a sigh of relief and just, oh my God, and thank you, thank you, thank you. And I turned to my mother, "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Just, I got my coin collection back. Well, some of you hearing this might think, "My God, your mother was just so mean to make you empty out your coin collection and do that." Well, it was a temporary loss. She obviously had done an agreement with the doctor's office to keep my coins from going into the general cash register. But it was a lesson that I've carried with me all these years. One of my pet peeves is when I see someone injure someone else and their response is, sorry. That's not acceptable to me. If you've caused injury to somebody or caused hurt, you should be making them whole. You should be doing something to make up for them. Sorry doesn't cut it. In the case with my sister, was I doing something to make it up to her? Not directly, but it certainly was going to be money coming out of my mother's pocket for something I had done. So my mother figured I was responsible, so why should she pay for my bad behavior? So the lesson I learned was not just turning to my mother at the doctor's office and saying, okay, Mom, sorry I threw the poinciana seed at my sister's eye. You pick up the tab. No, I was responsible. I was the one that caused this injury. I should be responsible to make my mother whole in this case. There's a corollary to this lesson, and that is when someone has been injured. This is another pet peeve of mine. That injured party does not want to hear excuses. They want to hear how the injuring party is going to make the injured party whole or fix the problem. I don't care that your alarm didn't go off. I don't care that whatever your excuse was that you did something to harm me. All I want to hear from you is how you're going to fix it for me. That's responsibility. Unfortunately, I don't see a heck of a lot of that around. But when I see somebody that does take responsibility and doesn't offer up excuses, that's somebody that I want to be around and that I want as a friend. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I'll be back next week. Thank you.